if you do not know what your identity is, by the time you walk into the swamp, Texas is going to lose that football game. And they may be 2-2 or 3-2 walking into Red River. The topic of the town. Everyone's going to talk about Arch Manning and how bad he was the first time in an actual national spotlight. Yeah, you have people who follow college football year round or Texas fans that can hype up him playing Louisiana Monroe or Mississippi State, the bottom feeder of the SEC at this point. But this was the real test. You had an entire offseason of knowing Arch Manning is your starting quarterback. You build the offense around him, and you have to walk into the shoe and beat the defending national champions. And he goes 17 for 30, $170, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Mind you, that 170, it wasn't anything real special to look at. If anything, it was putrid. It was bad. Going into the fourth quarter, he had 40 passing yards, and it took till the last couple of drives for him to actually get the ball moving downfield. Ohio State wins 14, I believe, 14-7. Am I remembering that correct? I might be correct on that one. Julian Sand goes 13 of 20, 126 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 0 picks. Just basically the perfect game manager that Ohio State needed for this game. Jeremiah Smith doesn't go any type of crazy. You have Carnell Tate getting an incredible touchdown pass from Julian Sand. That was a little bit underthrown. Arch Manning in Texas. And even Steve Sarkisian, come take a seat right here. What's your identity on offense? I think that's a fair question to ask about Texas. What is Texas's identity on the offensive side of the ball? Because we have the idea of what Steve Sarkisian could be because he produced Devonta Smith. Mac Jones looked incredible. He's supposed to be this offensive guru, but every single time Texas faces not even like an average opponent, just an above average opponent, their entire offensive system crumbles. They don't produce like this high-flying, high-powered machine. Last year, the way they won a lot of football games was this boa constrictor style of game where they could get to a 17-7 type of lead. 10 points is about what they have, which is just enough to hold a 2-possession lead, but it feels a little bit longer than that just because the defense is that good. You have that good of a defense to where any lead that you have basically feels like double of what it actually is. And then you run into what happened against Arizona State because that lead isn't as big as you think it is, and they can get back into the game. But what if the offense is not as good as you wanted it to be because you think you now have Arch Manning, an upgrade at the quarterback position from Quinn Ewers, but the defense is just what you expected it to be, but you can't produce points. Going into the shoe, they lost the time of possession battle, but they won the first down conversion, third down conversion, and the rushing yard battle. And they still lost 14-7. It's because I think Texas, when it does stall out, when you do run into 3 and outs, when the offense can't continue to move up and down the field, they don't have an identity to go back to. I talked about this last year when we were talking about Notre Dame and going against Ohio State. If there's one thing Notre Dame had for what got them to a national championship was, hey, Riley Leonard, we know his weaknesses. He's not going to be able to throw the football downfield. He's not going to be able to dot up a defense, but we're going to go back to rushing the ball. We know what our identity is, and it's going to be running the football and defense. Texas does not have something like that, or at least not up to this point. I give a lot of credit to Ohio State. I think we can easily say it's time to stop the narrative of, oh, is it Jeremiah Smith? Oh, is it Caleb Downs? Caleb Downs is the best player in college football. Point blank, period. The film represents that. That's all I can say. Like, Jeremiah Smith, you're damn good. And he's the best wide receiver in college football. So, like, I'm literally comparing the 1 and the 2, but I don't think we have to do this 1A, 1B situation. I think Caleb Downs, since he was a freshman at Alabama, has been the guy on defense. He's been the truth. And then he goes to Ohio State. He's the truth again, and he keeps getting better because when he made the change, or when Ohio State made the change at defensive coordinator to Matt Patricia, he's going to hold a lot of weight and responsibility as the safety. He cannot let anything get past him, and zero explosives happen for the Texas offense. I think I'm going a little too light on Arch Manning. when talking about this game. Arch couldn't even do the layups. That's the biggest red flag. Outside of the fact that I don't think Texas has an identity on the offensive side of the ball. And lucky for them, they have 3 cupcakes to tune up all these problems before they have to walk into the swamp and face off against DJ Lagway. A DJ Lagway that hopefully by then is not injured and he's fully healthy, ready to go. And then they have to play Oklahoma. Then they have to go to Georgia. Then they have to play Texas A&M at the end of the year, which Texas A&M looked pretty damn good this week. I believe the stat of the day to me is Texas A&M had 15 20-plus yard plays last season through 13 games. 15 of them. They had 8 in week 1. They're now a threat on the Texas schedule more than they were probably last year. If you do not know what your identity is, by the time you walk into the swamp, Texas is going to lose that football game. And they may be 2-2 or 3-2 walking into Red River. That's a problem. That's not an overreaction. That's stating the facts. I'm not trying to just bash on Texas and say the season's over, because Texas fans know it's not over. Arch Manning's going to have some good games to tune up and get better, but their ceiling may be limited if they do not know what they can fall back on and what they could potentially get their offense back and moving, especially knowing what's in front of them. Because teams now know Arch doesn't really handle pressure that well. If we can get in his face, he doesn't handle it. Like, we talked about Arch Manning as this mobile quarterback, but he's not a bruiser like a Tim Tebow, a Cam Newton, and he's not elusive like a Lenore Sellers. He can move a little bit, he can create, but he's not this A-plus athlete that can just break a game with his legs. And Ohio State knew that. I give a lot of credit to Julian Sayin before we wrap up and move on to the Bama game. Julian Sayin, I still think there is a road for him to get better, and thank goodness he plays the Ohio State schedule that he does, because by the time they play like Penn State and Michigan, he's going to have a ton of opportunities to get better and feel like he's playing in the flow of the offense. It's a tough matchup against Texas. Texas has a very good defense. At the end of the day, this was a 14-7 matchup. This felt like 2 heavyweight fights between 2 coaches that didn't want to make the first mistake and take the first blow. And Julian Sayin played on time. He was the better quarterback than Arch Manning. You saw more commercials of Arch Manning, and yet Julian Sayin was the better quarterback. And I saw him on no commercials because he was probably grinding the tape.